name is Samantha Ouyang. I'm a 21-year-old crypto enthusiast, and I've been working in the space since I was 16. So starting from last October, where I spent 2 months in Thailand, essentially participating in different pop-up cities, Edge City, Megazoo, and Zoo Thailand, I've been working on something called Zuvivor, which is a platform that empowers sexual assault survivors to report their abusers by matching victims of the same perpetrator together so that they know that they're not alone and can find a way forward. So a little bit about my personal story. So I've been traveling around for crypto conferences since I was like 17. I think my first in-person conference was ETH Denver 2022. And the first time I was ever sexually harassed was when I was in Austin for South by Southwest that year. And that made me hate the city, like essentially ever since. And then 2 years later, which was for Consensus 2024, I ended up returning to Austin for Consensus and started working on this idea at the hackathon, essentially in honor of my younger self. And then later on that year at Megazoo and Edge City, I became re-inspired to build this project out because when I was solo traveling in Cambodia, actually right before, I actually had to report my Airbnb host for sexual assault right before going to Thailand. And I mean, as a 19-year-old, traveling alone in a country across the world, I was so scared to report. I mean, I didn't speak the language or anything. And the numbers really reflect this too. 75% of sexual assault cases go unreported. And the thing is, victims are afraid to speak up because of a bunch of different reasons, but fear of retaliation, defamation lawsuits, reputation loss, and all of these other reasons listed here that essentially create something called a first mover disadvantage. So Zuvivor works to eliminate that first mover disadvantage by essentially allowing survivors to create a time-stamped record of their assault and be matched with victims of the same perpetrator. So it works in like a 4-step flow, but essentially victims can submit a report where they can fill out as many identifiers as they know about the perpetrator, including things like name, email, socials, physical features, location, really anything, any identifiers or clues help. And also document what happened and upload evidence in a secure manner there. Then they can verify their identity using some sort of method like KYC or ZK email or even like World ID to essentially prove that they're not like a bot. And this is also just to prevent false reports or defamation. And then when GPT-4o first came out, I also used it to help with like describing an image that is uploaded, which just helps with like machine readability. And then second, building on top of Cursive technology. Cursive is like this essentially design studio that does a lot of stuff with cryptography. So the system uses multi-party computation, or MPC, specifically PSI or private set intersection, to identify the overlapping information in the report submitted without revealing anything about the user's identity. And then from here, a knowledge graph structure emerges. So essentially these networks of victim nodes develop from the overlapping data in the edges, and then clusters start to form around these data points being similar. And this starts to point out like who the specific perpetrators are who are identified. And then as more pieces of the puzzle are revealed from different victims' stories, filling in a more comprehensive story, the survivor can essentially gain access to the other nodes in the network. And so in this way, the survivors can now essentially have a support system built upon shared experiences. And then lastly, once victims become part of this cluster, they can check their perpetrators to see the number of reports filed against them and also match with other victims of the same offender. And the platform also notifies when this happens. So this was just like a video demonstration of when I was at Consensus and we were like just doing the whole like machine readability, uploading an image with like GPT-4o and having it describe what's going on. So I think it already happened, but the video has like, oh, this is like a girl sitting in front of a table. This is just like a live demo of like the front end. So you can see there's like a form to report a perpetrator. All of these films are pretty much optional because you just fill out whatever information you have about the person. Obviously, like the more information you have, the better and more strong of a case you can make. So in this example, I'm like trying to report a so-called John Smith. I fill out some incident details. I go to verify my identity. This is just a demo using World ID. And that's just basically verifying that you're a human submitting a report. At the time of the hackathon, I also used Arbitrum Stylus, which essentially makes it really easy to write Rust code to help me write the smart contract. This was pretty much this code was used to store information about the data in structs and write related functions, as well as just helping to identify the intersection of the reports. This was back in the brainstorming process of this entire project. So as Zoo Thailand, I really got a lot of support from the community in terms of people being experts in like graph theory and just like CS structures in general. So I started working on this graph architecture a little bit more that I mentioned. So this was like a mini whiteboard session that I did with someone over there. So that was pretty much the first half. When I was at MegaZoo and Edge City, I ended up winning, I think, 4 different hackathon awards at that hackathon. And then the second pop-up city I participated in Thailand was Zoo Thailand. And so over there, I started working more on the graph neural networks. So first I worked on training like this graph neural network using PyTorch for the matching algorithm. And so different fields like eye color, license plate, or phone number are essentially encoded and embedded into like node features. And then the GNN essentially learns these embeddings so that it can classify whether these nodes represent the same perpetrator or not. And then now with this GNN, and then also using Ezekiel is another really cool cryptography company. It allows you to prove the trustworthiness of the model and that the model itself is acting in good faith without having to reveal any of the sensitive data submitted by the victims. And then essentially you can just export that model as an Onyx model so that it's like ZK proof compatible, and you can generate and verify ZK proofs from there. Just to explain with like some sample data, I'm gonna do like a quick walkthrough of how this would work. So essentially you collect information about the people through the forums, and then it identifies the similarities between the reports. So as you can see over here, even though like report 0 and report 1 aren't exactly the same, so like, for example, there's John Doe and then John D. You can kind of tell from the information presented here that there's a high probability that's talking about the same person. Like, there's like Los Angeles, CA, and also Los Angeles, California. And then here's just like another similar example. 2 and 3 can also tell they're kind of the same person based off the context clues, even though it's not like an exact string match. And then over here, report number 4 is obviously the straggler in this case because there are almost no commonalities compared to the other reports listed before. And so it ends up forming some sort of graph structure that looks like this, where 0 and 1 are connected together and it forms a cluster. 2 and 3 are connected because it seems to be describing the same person, forms a cluster, and then 4 is just kind of just there, waiting for someone to submit a similar report or to have like a match be generated. Here's another demo. So essentially when you like run the Python script, it creates like vectors of different node feature encodings. And then at the bottom, it generates edges, basically to identify if they're similar enough. And then over here, you can see that it does so because the output exactly matches. So 0 matches with 1, 1 matches with 0, 2 and 3 match together, and then 4 is nowhere to be found because there are no matches between these 2 nodes. This is just like a little bit of a summary of the tech stack that I used for this project. And yeah, here's just some of the traction the project has gotten so far. So as mentioned, I started this project. It would have been about a year ago now, officially. And it's gotten a lot of traction that I'm really grateful for. And I'm so glad that the community is starting to speak up more about these issues. I heard a lot of people at the time were super interested in bringing this back to their own communities, like communities and like people who talked about like this being a really big problem in like modeling, even like jujitsu, like nightlife and clubbing in general. So I think this technology definitely has a lot of potential. I also got to speak about it at ETH Denver last year. I don't know if the video is showing, it's probably a long talk, but I also got to speak about it at ETH Denver earlier this year, so I'm really grateful for that as well. And around the time I started working on this project, that was when the news about like the DWF Labs guy came out, where he ended up like drugging some person at a conference. And so we had a whole narrative of people coming, especially women coming out to speak about issues like this at conferences. And I actually am still connected with like a lot of like the Women of Web3 hubs here and people who still want to make this a reality and almost like a standard, especially at crypto conferences. So as I mentioned, ended up winning 4 prizes at Edge City, and then I think another 2 other prizes at Zoo Thailand. Got to speak about it at ETH Denver, and I had even people come out and say like they went specifically to ETH Denver to hear my talk. So honestly, just like really flattered. And I remember the first time I gave this presentation at Edge City, the whole room was just like got on like their feet and gave me a standing ovation, which was honestly just so heartwarming to hear. I think like people were like reposting it everywhere on Twitter. I had an Arbitrum judge like interview me that ended up going somewhat viral as well. And I think within 6 hours, someone ended up like sending money to like my EVM address. So I guess that was like the first angel check I ever got. That was also super cool. On the right side, I sent my parents' reaction. My dad said, "Oh, you shouldn't disappoint your investors." Hopefully I haven't. And yeah, after working on this project for the past year, I'm really just following up with a lot of the ecosystems that are super interested in implementing something like this, especially like during conferences, mostly looking into other builder communities and potential grants out there, looking for people who would also be willing to partake in this project and see where it can go. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor to speak at Devconnect this year. And yeah, let's come together and hold perpetrators accountable.